There are places on Earth right now that you are not allowed to walk into. Not because they're private property, not because of a do not enter sign someone put up for fun. Radiation structural collapse, government secrecy, a city that legally doesn't want you finding what's underneath. These five places are real. They still exist or exist until very recently. And every single one of them will actively try to stop you from getting in. This is what line. Start with a Ferris wheel, bright, yellow, 26-meter tall, standing completely still in an empty park for very nearly 40 years. This was supposed to be the grand opening of Pripyat News Park of Culture and Rest, a Soviet amusement park with a Ferris wheel, bumper car, swing boats, and a shooting gallery. The opening date was locked in May 1st, 1986, time for May Day celebration. But it never opened, not on that day, and for all practical purpose, not ever. On April 26th, 1986, just 5 days before the ribbon cutting, reactor 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear plant, a few kilometers away, exploded. There's a rumor that followed with this very well for decades, that officials quietly let it run for a few hours the day after the disaster. All this to keep residents calm and distracted while evacuation orders were being prepared. It's a great story. It's also, as far as historians can verify, unsubstantiated, no confirmed record of it actually happening. What is confirmed is worse in its own way. The park simply never got its first real day of use. It just sat there, brand new and totally unused, while the entire city around it was evacuated within 36 hours and never repopulated. Today, the Chernobyl exclusion zone lets in guide tours briefly on a marked path, but radiation in Pripyat isn't evenly spread. Around that amusement park, especially patches of moss and soils have measured radiation levels high enough to be among the most contaminated spots in the entire zone. Tens of thousands of times background radiations in place. In 2017, for the first time since 1986, a couple of tourists manually pushed the Ferris wheel and got one of its seen to swing. Just by hand, it was the closest that ride has ever come to actually being used the way it was built for. Second Place is a hospital built specifically because too many people were dying of the same disease in the same city at the same time. Waverly Hills in Jefferson County, Kentucky, opened in 1910 to deal with a tuberculosis epidemic. It started small, 40 or 50 patients, but by the mid 1920s, a massive 5 stories expansion opened, built to house over 400 patients at once. Tuberculosis, before antibiotics exist, killed a huge percentage of the people who caught it. Waverly Hills was at its core a building designed around the assumption that a lot of people who entered it were not going to leave. And that creates a very specific, very grim logistic problem. The hospital built a tunnel, a steam and supply tunnel connecting the main building to the base of the hill, originally meant for utility cars. For a stretch of the 1920s through the 1940s, staff also reportedly used it with a cable pulley system to move body out of the building without other patients seeing those. It's still called the Death Tunnel today. Thing changed in 1943 when the antibiotic streptomycin came into the use and tuberculosis stopped being the death sentence it had been. Patient number collapsed. By June of 1961, Waverly Hill closed for good, not from a disaster, just from no longer being needed. It sat empty and decaying for decades before a couple bought it in 2001, and it's now known less for its mythical history than for a reputation as one of the most haunted buildings in the United States. Extreme paranormal television, and the inspiration for at least one horror film built directly around that tunnel. Whether or not you believe any of that part, the tunnel itself is real, and so is the reason it was built. Our place is not to run from decay. It's a secret that worked exactly as intended for nearly 50 years. Beneath the town of Corsham in England, in the 1950s, the British government built an underground complex, spanning roughly 35 acres, stretching over a mile, with more than 60 miles of road inside it. It was designed to shelter up to 4,000 government personnel, potentially including the Prime Minister and the royal family, through a nuclear war. This wasn't a bare concrete shelter. It had its own hospital, kitchen, laundry, storage, and a phone exchange that was at the same time the second largest in the entire country. It had also a television studio so that whatever the government was left could still broadcast to the public from underground. There was an underground lake for drinking water, kept at a steady 68 degrees. Murals were painted on the wall to keep morale up in a bunker some people might spend months inside, and the public had no idea any of it existed, not officially anyway. The site wasn't declassified until December of 2004. By the time it finally became public knowledge, it had already been sitting ready, fully stocked, fully staffed on paper, for decades, for a war that thankfully never came. There's a darker footnote to this one. By the 2000, ballistic missile respawn time had shrunk to around 4 minutes, fast enough that there would likely never have been time to actually evacuate anyone into it. Britain built and maintained an entire secret underground city for a scenario that go faster than the plan to survive it. So, fourth place, more people think they've already seen this one, they have not. The official Paris Catacomb, the ossuary tourists pay to walk through, lined with the bones of roughly 6 million people, is real and is still open to the public. But that tourist road covers a tiny fraction of what's actually down there. The full network of tunnel and all quarries underneath Paris stretch for around 280 kilometers. Almost all of that is completely off limits, not abandoned and forgotten off limit, actively illegal. Unauthorized access down there has been against the law in Paris since November of 1955, and yet, for decades, a subculture calling themselves cataphiles has been getting in anyway. Through sewer access points, old manholes, sealed off metro connections, sometimes with keys to door most Parisians don't know exist. What they found and built down there is stranger than just old tunnel. In September of 2004, police patrolling the network stumbled into a fully functioning underground movie theater. Screening room, seating, films reel, a bar, all built and maintained in secret by an anonymous group. People have held parties down there. People have gotten married down there. People have also, more than once, gotten lost down there. In Chanel is that flood, collapsed, and narrowed down to crawl space barely wide enough for a human body. There's even a dedicated police unit whose entire job is patrolling these tunnels for trespassers, nicknamed by the cataphiles themselves the cataflics. Get caught and it's a fine. Get lost and it can be a lot worse than a fine. An entire second city exists under Paris. Almost nobody is allowed to see most of it. Last one is the most recent, and by the time you're watching this, it may not even physically exist anymore. It opened in 2000 as Jazzland rebranded as Six Flags New Orleans in 2003. Roller coaster, water rides, a normal American theme park. Its very last day of operation was August 21, 2005. 8 days later, Hurricane Katrina hit. The park's drainage system fell completely. Water from Lord Pontchartrain poured in and didn't recede for over a month. Some parts of the park sat under 6 feet of corrosive, salt mixed flood water that whole time. Six Flags eventually declared the site a total loss, estimating roughly $32.5 million in damage, with company assessment finding around 80% of the buildings and rides destroyed by prolonged saltwater exposure. Rebuilding never happened. Six Flags walked away from a 75-year lease in 2009. The city took the property back. Outlet malls, new theme park, redevelopment plan, proposal after proposal fell through for close of 2 decades. In that time, the rusting flood warp rides became one of the most photographed abandoned sites in America and a filming location for movies including Jurassic World. But this isn't a still standing, still exploring story anymore. As of earlier this year, demolition of the site was complete. One of the most famous abandoned places in the country, a place of million people have seen photos and video without ever seeing setting foot inside, is now simply gone. So, a Ferris wheel that ran for a few minutes by hand, decades after it was built, a tunnel built to move the deaf without anyone seeing, a city built in secret for a war fast enough to make it useless, tunnels under Paris where an entire hidden movie theater once existed, and a theme park that the storm erased completely so it doesn't even exist anymore. Five places, five different reasons you're not supposed to walk in. If you had to guess which one of these you'd actually risk visiting, let me know in the comments and subscribe because there are a lot more of these still standing.